Hey.
This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two Girls, One Ghost. We are your ghostesses. That's Corinne. I'm
Hello.
Sabrina. And I have an Instagram account that I want to share with everyone. And I shared it with you, Corinne, the other day. It was in my For You page. So I was so surprised by it. I love how they target you and they know you. It's called Mystic Primrose.
Yes. And
her name is Lily Statham. And she's a witchcraft and Instagram coach. Her page is so unbelievably, the aesthetic is beautiful. There's lots of purples, but there's a lot of spells, a lot of practices that you can do. But then there's also a lot of explanations. I feel like I'm learning a lot from following this Instagram.
Mm-hmm. I feel like she makes it very accessible. The one that you showed me, I was like, I could easily do this. And this doesn't feel like something that I can't just get all the items that I need during my regular stop at the grocery store.
Right. Okay, there's a banishing spell, a full moon money spell.
That's what I need.
We missed the full moon, but there is going to be an eclipse, this weekend.
Yes, I will see it because it will pass directly. New England is on its path, but Burlington, Vermont, and my hometown is directly in the full solar eclipse. So I'm going up this weekend.
You are?
And we record Monday morning, and Monday afternoon, I'm completely blocked for 4 hours to stare up into the sky. My parents bought the little glasses that we can use. And we were so nervous because Vermont in April is so shitty. So we were like, what are the chances that we're actually going to be able to see anything except for the sky just blinking and going dark because it's usually overcast. But currently we're now 4 days before this is supposed to happen. And it says it's going to be completely sunny and clear.
We should both find some hot springs to go check out and see if any sexy sexual fae come seduce us.
If there were hot springs in Vermont, maybe.
Go to the quarry, the local quarry.
I'll go to the quarry. I'll go to everything's still frozen, I think. People are still skiing and snowboarding in Vermont. It's literally snowing outside as we record right now in Massachusetts. So no hot springs for me, but I will report back if anything happens. I heard that they're turning on CERN at the same time and the conspiracy side of TikTok that I'm clearly on. Everybody's
Wait, what are they saying? What's a conspiracy?
Well, CERN is supposed to be turned on again, the CERN machine. And
What's
everybody thought it was, this. I'm going to butcher this, so I have to Google it. It's basically where they collide particles together.
When they create dark matter type of thing?
They operate the largest particle physics laboratory. And so everybody's nervous that they're going to create a black hole or they're going to open up another dimension. So every time CERN is turned on and they're doing an experiment, there's always all of this concern. And usually it also happens.
They open a new dimension. How sick.
Well, during the solar eclipse, if that happens, honestly, Vermont's probably the best place for me to possibly be in because half the people are going to be on acid and they're going to be like, yep, I've been seeing this for years. It's going to be the people that actually respond well to watching beings crawl out of the sky. So I am happy I'll be there, but I'll report back if anything weird happens.
You can record it. And
if I'm alive.
If anything happens, we can play it back and see what's up.
Yeah, maybe I'll do a little Instagram live. Everyone look at the sky.
I think in LA, you can see, it's not going to be a total eclipse, but you can see at 11.
Part of it.
05 or something like that will be the height of its eclipse.
A little crescent.
Eclipsiness.
It'll cover part of the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Vermont, we already have a small population and it's supposed to triple or something like that.
And you're definitely supposed to look directly into the sun, right?
Well, with the goggles.
That's
why you get your special goggles.
I was being sarcastic.
I'm but literally you do look directly into the sun here.
Yes, if you have the goggles.
If you have the goggles, they sell them at Walmart. Go get them.
Yeah, do not look into the sun. Otherwise, you will blind yourself.
I thought I had a ghost story to tell you for a second the other day.
What happened?
This maybe just proves, because I've told you that I have been experiencing some really crippling insomnia and difficult third trimester pregnancy symptoms that made me going from pregnancy isn't that hard to holy shit, I might be dying. But I was having one of those days and I was walking through my living room and I'm turning the corner and there's this misty cloud wafting through the room. And a normal person, and maybe me normally, would have stopped. But I was so tired that I literally thought to myself, oh, a ghost. I'm just going to keep walking through it. Like I was just like, oh, well, it better move because I'm on that path. So I literally walked through it. And as I'm like walking through it and turned the corner, I realized we had a humidifier on and it was the mist from the humidifier. But I truly was like, what a story. I'm going to get to tell Sabrina about this ghost that I'm just currently walking through because I'm too tired to stop or turn around. But it was the humidifier.
I love this so much because you're just like, you cannot be fucked with right now. You're like, I can't fuck with you, ghost. I'm just, no. I gotta walk through you.
I'm like, sounds like we both need to be in this room. So
at least then you realize it wasn't a ghost because a full form apparition would be a whole new escalation and step up from what you have experienced so far in your house.
Yeah. I feel like that's one way to kind of like peacock on a ghost too, to just fully look at it in its little misty eyes and walk straight through it. Not a care in the world.
What do you think it feels like to walk through a ghost? Have you ever experienced that?
Well, I had that one guy that, remember, he like climbed up the stairs and ran at me.
Charged at you, yeah.
So I don't really know what it feels like walking through a ghost, but that was just like immense like wind and pressure going through me. So I don't know.
Probably similar to that then.
Anyhow, no more hauntings to report from my end, but I'm sure we'll have some.
I don't have any hauntings, do I? Oh, actually, this is mean. So listen, my dad and I, he lives in a freaking another country.
And has for a long time.
Yeah, and has a newborn son. I've been depressed and I go through a lot of like, I have a hard time always responding and talking to people. My dad also is not great at like reaching out to me. So I was like, I'm going to reach out to him and ask him if he could write down all of his ghost stories for me and so that I can share them on the podcast. I'm going to read this conversation with you. Hey, Dad, would you ever take some time to write down your paranormal experiences for me? His response, I literally just had one. Next comment. My imaginary daughter wrote me a message.
This makes me so mad.
And he was like, oh, no, that's funny. And I said, I just did like an eye rolling emoji. He was like, you should consider a career in comedy. He said, you know, I'm teasing. I love you dearly. But TBD on the ghost stories. He's more invested in his stand-up career right now.
I mean, you texting your dad is basically like using a Ouija board because it's the only way you get to communicate with him is you reaching out.
Father, are you here?
Just like incoherent sentences back that aren't really answering anything that you've asked. You're like, okay, goodbye. And then you don't break it out for a little while again.
Close out session.
Close session. When you text him, I wish that you did do this. Now when you're just like done with a conversation, you should just use one of those little memes that you can, like a GIF or whatever, where it's just like, goodbye. Done. Closing out the board.
Oh, man. You know, parents, they're living their first life as well. So they are learning.
They are.
As like, you know, their conscious first life, as far as we know. They're learning. They're not perfect.
I saw this TikTok the other day where it was, I don't remember who posted it, but it was basically like a TikTok where, you know, on TikTok, you can use like still images and swipe through them like a carousel.
I didn't, but okay.
Okay. Well, someone had posted and it was something like, I'm going to butcher this, but it was something about like swipe if you could choose to get your mom to go to therapy. And I swiped on it and the next still was like, why did you swipe? We both know she's never going to go. I was dying laughing at it. I love the ones like that. It's so funny.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it's people have really funny ones too, where it will be like just something random where it will be like, if you've ever wanted motorcycle parts to grow out of your toes, swipe right. And then you'll swipe right. And people will be like, why did you swipe? Like just like random ass shit. And I love those ones.
Do I need to like get onto TikTok? It's not going to happen.
No, don't do it.
You've been trying to get me on there.
Well, now I'm weaning off. I barely go on myself. I go on like once a week.
I know. I like how we go through phases where it's like, I'm going to post TikToks and then we never do.
I don't really care anymore. I'm pregnant, so I can't do anything.
You have an excuse.
I have to be supervised. I don't have great memory. And you know who doesn't have the best memory right now either? My brother, Christian, because he called me. And he's the reason I'm doing this episode today. He called me and he was really excited. And he was like, I have to unload all of the information I just got last night in Galveston, Texas, when I went on a ghost hunt. Or it wasn't really a ghost hunt. It was like a ghost walking tour. So he and one of his friends, they went to Galveston and they were just like walking around Galveston. And they, after exploring for the whole day, they were like, let's do one of these walking like city ghost hunt tours, informational tours. And he was just like info dumping everything he could remember. But of course, they went to so many places and things were a little cloudy. And he was like sending me pictures of places that he went. And he was like, I think there's something about like a woman and a child here. And it was just like, you know, there was a lot of missing pieces. It was a little cloudy. And then a few of the spots that he remembered really specific stories with. Mm-hmm. Of course, when I'm Googling, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like it's a secret story, just like
you have to go on the ghost tour.
Yeah, because there's nothing else. So I was like, well, I can't cover these ones. But there's a lot going on there because I was asking Christian, I was like, oh, so where did you all go? Like, did you go here? Did you go there? Because I was like Googling as he's telling me these stories. And he was like, no, we only walked like a couple blocks. I was like, wait, you got all of these ghost stories within like 2 blocks? And he was like, oh my God, yeah, Galveston is extremely haunted.
Where is Galveston relative to where he lives?
It's like an hour away. It's accessible because my brother lives in Houston.
I'm looking on the map. Let's see. Okay, it's like Oceanside.
Mm-hmm.
Or Gulf side, I guess.
It's a port city.
Wait, is this where they found all the dolls wash up on the shore?
Oh, is it? I have no idea. If you Google Galveston haunts, there's like literally 200 stories that come up. There's so many places.
Us all 200?
No, I picked out 2.
200 divided by...
I think it would be an entire year of episodes for us that we could do on Galveston. But it did trigger a memory. And I was like, wait a second. When we were in Texas, I do remember a few people who we met during the meet and greets that were asking if we were going to Galveston.
Interesting.
And then I was like, this must be why, because it was so haunted and it was so close to where we were that it makes sense that people would have asked or assumed that we would have gone. So anyway, this episode is inspired by Christian's ghost adventure.
Okay, these dolls were washing up all along the Texas coastal bend. So not specifically Galveston, but I imagine a doll or two ended up there.
Creepy. Ugh. There's a lot going on. But let's focus on Galveston. Galveston, it's a port city. Well, actually, it's described as a coastal resort city. So I'm like, ooh, fancy. It's in the southeast Texas area. And it's little. It's only 211.31 square miles. So it's about 3-ish miles wide, 27-ish miles long. Like, it's a tiny little
and place. There's 200 ghost stories that are like Googleable.
Yes. Every block has a haunted place.
Wow.
Pretty much. There are just over 50,000 people who live there. So the population, I mean, there's still like plenty of people that live there, but it's not huge. I feel like there's just as many ghosts as there are people here, honestly. Galveston was once Texas's largest city. It was known as the Queen City of the Gulf. And being a port city, it was a very easy spot for trade and whatnot. And so it was back in the 1800s, like really being built up a bunch.
Okay.
But everything changed in the year 1900. Because in 1900, Galveston, at the time, it was the epitome of the American dream, right? Like there was so much wealth there. They had the highest per capita income rates in the entire U.S. So it was like just this little pocket of densely rich people.
Little pocket of rich people with big pockets.
Yeah, everything's bigger in Texas, baby. And they had a downtown section called the Strand. I think they probably still call it the Strand. But it was considered at the time the Wall Street of the Southwest. Oh. So Galveston was basically like what we view as, I feel like when we talk about like, oh, the American dream, and everyone would go to New York City and they'd like go to Ellis Island. And it was like, you make it big in New York, baby. It was Texas. It was Galveston, Texas.
Wow. Okay.
In 1900. August 27th, 1900, a ship off the Windward Islands detected a tropical cyclone beginning to form. It was believed that this storm had originated as tropical wave coming from the west coast of Africa and kind of like growing in strength as it came across the Atlantic Ocean. And over the next couple of days, it traveled very far. And there's still, I was reading like, I guess like historical meteorologists were saying like they're not really sure if it originated there. But at the time, that's what they thought. And we don't have any concrete proof. But it doesn't matter where it came from. What matters is that it existed.
Right. It is also one of those things where it's 1900s. Like, how fast is this news even being able to be like transported to people? Like,
right.
And how quickly can you prepare for this? This is like, I imagine something devastating is about to happen.
It is. I feel like I've been choosing a lot of natural disasters because I did the whole like avalanche landslide during my last episode.
It's true. Wait, did I ever tell you that my great grandfather was in, I can't remember what war it was, and I'll have to get information from my mom, but there was a massive avalanche and he's the only one who survived in his whole entire unit.
What?
Yeah.
That's really traumatic.
I know.
Oh my God. Yeah, get more information on that.
I will.
Not to be morbid, but like I want to know all the details.
Okay, I'm going to text her and hopefully we can get it by the end of this episode. But
yeah,
more tragedy coming from Corinne.
Okay, so over the next couple days, this tropical wave starts to form into a cyclone, and a tropical storm has now entered the Caribbean Sea. And by September 2nd, it's still just a small cyclone, but it's making its way northwest over these islands. At the time, the Weather Bureau's Galveston office begins to receive warnings from the central office that they had in Washington, D.C. about this storm. But the Central Weather Office in Washington, D.C. decided, kind of like what you were saying, where it was like, how quickly can they prepare? They decided in D.C. that they would actually just describe it as a tropical disturbance. And they didn't want to use the term hurricane because they didn't really know the actual path of the storm yet. And they didn't want to cause panic. So they actively chose to kind of downplay the severity of the storm just because they didn't want people to panic if it ended up not going into the area where they thought maybe it could go.
This makes me so upset because it's like, it goes back to like conversations we've had before where the government hides so much information from us. And sometimes I understand it, like with the aliens, for example, like they don't want to ensue panic, but it's like, eventually we're going to find out. And wouldn't you rather like deliver the news in your way rather than everyone find out in this like dramatic, scary way?
100%. And like your choice to omit information or to use different terminology because you're nervous about people's response could quite literally kill thousands of people. Like you're responsible for those deaths.
2 girls, 1 ghost for presidents.
Guys, we're going to give it to you straight, even if it scares you. So.
We're presidents of the paranormal club.
Aliens are coming on April 8th.
Conspiracy hats on. Everyone get in your bunker. Make sure you have a lazy river in your bunker.
And connect it to via tunnel to one of ours so we can all hang out.
What's the password?
Secret Sparkle Superstar Girl. That's what it is.
Okay, come on in.
Because that's what I would have picked when I was 8 years old, which is probably the first time I ever thought about having a bunker.
You know what that like weirdly triggered a memory of is there was a computer game for Barbie clothing design, but you could literally design clothes and print it and like make clothing for your Barbie.
I don't remember this. That is so cool. But it was just paper? So we just kind of like construct?
I think like it was actual fabric. Like you like made, I think it was like a specific type of machine that did this.
Whoa. Let's bring that back. I'd be down to play with that right now. Yeah.
I wanted to be like a stylist.
You basically are. You style yourself.
I threw out all my clothes. I didn't throw out, I donated all my clothes.
Starting fresh, 2024.
New start.
So by the time the storm reached Florida, it had really intensified. It was no longer a small cyclone. It was definitely becoming a problem and becoming very dangerous. The path of destruction was thought to impact the American East Coast. So basically they were thinking like, okay, this is going up into Florida. It's going to pop over to the western side of Florida, and then it's going to kind of like curve back over Florida and make its way up the eastern seaboard and, you know, hit New York, Maine, go up all the way up.
Okay, so they're thinking that coast, not even Texas.
Yes, but there was always a possibility that it could have hit Texas because at this time it was just basically like right off the coast of Florida. Like it was in the Keys. So it was like, which way is it going to go? You really should warn everyone. It did not loop back over Florida. It instead went straight into the Gulf of Mexico, graduating to a hurricane. By September 6th, wind speeds had reached 100 miles per hour. The next day, 145 miles per hour. It was now a Category 4 hurricane per our current standards of hurricane measurement. And on September 8th, around 8 p.m. Central Time, it made landfall. The eye of the storm passing over Galveston, which at the time, the highest point in this city of Galveston was 8.7 feet above sea level. So it's 2.7 meters.
Oh, that's
so
really
it's basically in the ocean already.
Yeah. Holy shit.
The hurricane continued to move north, not being downgraded to a Category 1 hurricane until it reached Ontario. It took getting to Canada for this thing to even be like level 1 hurricane.
Jeez.
It was strong. This hurricane, called the Great Storm of 1900, would later be renamed as the Great Galveston Hurricane and the Galveston Flood. It was the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history, and it still is today.
Just like per capita?
Per deaths, like deadliest natural disaster. No tornado, no hurricane, nothing has come close to the amount of people that died as they did in
because no one was prepared. There was no preparation. There was no way to like protect.
There was so little preparation. The people were literally like, there's this one story of this artist who literally moved to Galveston the day before the hurricane hit. Cause like people didn't know, or it was just like raining and they just like didn't like, there was very, very few people evacuated.
That's really sad.
Yeah. And if they did, I think it was like they already had plans to leave, or they were just like, ooh, this is like maybe not great. Like we're rich. Let's go to our ranch. But that's not everyone, you know, like I'm making it seem like it was a bunch of rich people paradise.
We're rich. Let's throw some money at it.
Yeah, like, let's build a wall. No, for the most part, like there were a lot of people who were just like normal working class. There were a lot of people living in poverty there still. And so the people that did escape, I think it was only like 2,000 people actually left and avoided the storm.
Okay, I have a little side tangent question, and I don't think you have the answer or did the research of this, but I know that like every time there's a hurricane, there's basically like a list of names, and like they like it's like whatever name is next is what they use. But like, how did they pick the names, and why are they all like women names?
I don't know when that started. Wait, but then what was Henry? Henry was something. Should we look it up really quick?
Okay, tropical cyclone naming history and retired names. Reason to name hurricanes. Experience shows that the use of short, distinctive names written as well as spoken communications is quicker and less subject to error than older, more cumbersome latitude, longitude identification methods. These advantages are especially important in exchanging detailed storm information between hundreds of widely scattered stations, coastal bases, and ships at sea. Okay, that makes sense. It also reduces confusion when 2 or more tropical storms occur at the same time. For example, one hurricane can slowly be moving westward in the Gulf of Mexico, while exactly at the same time another hurricane can be moving rapidly northward along the Atlantic coast. For several hundred years, many hurricanes in the West Indies were named after particular saints' days on which the hurricane occurred. For example, there was Hurricane Santa Ana, which struck Puerto Rico on July 26, 1825. And an early example of the use of a woman's name for a storm was in the novel Storm by George R. Stewart in 1941. In 1953, the United States abandoned a confusing 2-year-old plan to name storms by phonetic alphabet, and then a new international phonetic alphabet was introduced, and then the United States began using female names for storms. Then the practice of naming hurricanes solely after women came to an end in 1978.
Okay, so maybe it's just a free-for-all?
Yeah, and then there's like retired names now.
Who's in charge of naming it, you know? Like, what's the one person that they're like, what's the next name? And they're like, Lorraine? They're like, great, Hurricane Lorraine coming off the coast of...
I do think there is like a list. There's like a planned list already in...
Oh, yeah, because they have to act pretty quick, you know?
Right. And this is also from the National Hurricane Center and Central Pacific Hurricane Center website. So it's legit.
Okay.
Wait, on this, it says, can I have a tropical cyclone named for me? We do not control the naming of tropical storms. Instead, a list of names has been established by the International Committee of the United Nations World Meteorological Organization. There's one list for each of 6 years.
I wouldn't want my name to be a part of a storm that causes devastation and kills a bunch of people.
No.
So I would never pitch my name. It'd be unfortunate if it did end up being
I would love
one.
to be the name of a storm that like doesn't hurt anyone but cancels school for like a couple days.
Yeah, exactly. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Or like does something magical where it's like this storm has taken all the monarch butterflies on a venture and like everybody gets to see just like a sky full of butterflies, and then you turn around as a storm and you go dump them back where they belong. You know, you don't really disrupt.
The interior of your brain is SpongeBob.
Oh my God. It's because my brother and I would watch SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents. My dad was like shaking his head when we were all in Texas for the rodeo because my brother referenced that this one guy looked like this one character in Fairly Odd Parents. And my brother was like, oh, that reminds me of My Shiny Teeth in Me. And my dad was like, what? And I was like, you know, My Shiny Teeth in Me. And we just start singing the song. And my dad was like, Good Lord. It makes it seem like we just sat there and watched TV our entire childhood. But some things do stay with you.
You didn't. Those were like our shows. Those were like, you came home from school and those were on. And you just have a good memory and they were ingrained in you. And I think you formed
it's a catchy
the way
tune.
You process life through a mashup of Fairly Odd Parents and SpongeBob. And that's beautiful.
And now I get to use my imagination every day with ghost stories.
It's real. It's not imagination.
Oh, man. Okay, so this would be the deadliest and is the deadliest disaster in U.S. history. It's estimated that up to 12,000 people died in the United States because of the storm, the majority of deaths occurring around Galveston. So they think that around 8,000, if not more, people died in Galveston alone.
Jeez.
To give a comparison, Hurricane Katrina, a Cat 5 hurricane, caused 1,836 deaths.
I would have guessed way more. Like, I would have guessed it would have been the same level of catastrophe as this one, but wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Hurricane Maria was like, I think it was like 3,400 or something like that. This is 12,000 people.
12,000.
The Great Galveston Hurricane decimated the Galveston area. 7,000 buildings were destroyed. Over 3,600 homes demolished. 10,000 people left homeless, which was over a quarter of their population before the storm hit. Because I think at the time they were like 36,000 people or so living there. 8,000 people or so died and another 10,000 are left homeless.
Jeez.
So half their population is just dead or homeless.
So they basically have to like rebuild everything.
Everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Most people had drowned or been crushed by the waves and the debris. Some people died after being struck by projectiles that were thrown by the strong winds. And many people died days later after being trapped under the rubble and not found in time. Or when they were found, there was a lot of accounts of people like these rescuers that would walk around on the rubble and they would hear the screams of the survivors beneath them, like begging for help.
Oh my gosh.
But they couldn't remove the debris quickly enough to get to them before they succumbed. It was really hard to locate everyone.
That's so devastating. And it's also making me think of that bridge collapse that happened so recently.
Oh my God, I know. It like really hurts my heart to see all the cars going down into the water.
Oh, it's just like my skin is crawling. It's so sad.
The cemeteries were also destroyed from this hurricane, and the dead would literally be ripped out of their graves from the earth and pulled out to sea by the tidal waves. And the newly deceased, there were so many people who passed that there was no way to just give like a proper earth burial to these people. So many, many, many people were put into caskets or like boarded up onto ships that were brought out to sea, and they were given a burial in the ocean.
I mean, this is what I always say is when you swim in the ocean, you're literally swimming in a graveyard.
You are. Yeah, 100%. All of the bridges that connected the island of Galveston, because it's like this little island that you like drive over this little bridge to get to. It's very tiny. It's just off the coast. All of the bridges connecting the island of Galveston to the mainland were washed away. Electrical, telegraph, telephone wires, all downed. There was like no way to communicate with anyone, nowhere to get anywhere. You were stuck here. There were 15 miles of railroad tracks that were destroyed, and there was actually a train heading for Galveston from Houston on that morning that the hurricane made landfall, and it was carrying 95 passengers. And the tracks up ahead had been washed away already. So basically, like, the train stopped, and then they had to get all the passengers out, and they were like, we're going to transfer you to another train because the other side of the tracks hadn't been washed out yet. We're going to transfer you to the other side of the tracks, get in this other train, load you in here, and we're going to bring you to safety. So they're doing this transfer. The field surrounding the railroad tracks, there's over 200 bodies just floating in the field around these people that are like trying to get onto a different train. Did
the people on the train survive though?
Well, not really.
Oh no.
So the 95 people, they're brought to Bolivar Peninsula. And it was here that they were waiting for a ferry to come pick them up. The ferry captain gets there. He cannot dock. The waves are so intense. There's literally no way for him to get his boat connected. It is like viciously being pulled, and he's going to break his boat and like sink his boat if he keeps trying. So he ultimately is like, this isn't going to work. I can't do anything. So he helplessly has to back away and abandon the plan to rescue these people. So the train crew, they're like, oh my God, okay, we don't know what to do. Let's just attempt to go back in the same direction that we came despite this rising water. what else is there to do? So the water continues to rise, and soon the train and all of these people are just completely stuck. 10 passengers get out, and they just book it through the water and through all of this like mess of the storm to the Point Bolivar lighthouse, and they sought shelter in this lighthouse. The 85 people who stayed on the train died. The storm waters overtook the train cars, and all of them drowned. The 10 people that went to the lighthouse, they survived alongside 190 other local residents who also ran to the lighthouse to seek shelter inside of that lighthouse.
Okay, so go to a lighthouse in case of emergency.
If you're by the sea and there's a lighthouse near you.
So there were 200 people that, I can't even imagine how big this lighthouse was and like how sardined they all were.
I know, just like packed into like the stairs and the railings. And yeah.
Jeez.
So today, the Galveston Railroad Museum, they keep record of this devastating and haunting event. And they also have a haunting of their own. Actually, a couple hauntings.
I wouldn't be surprised.
A 30-year-old man from Brooklyn named William Watson, he was an assistant engineer on a steamboat called the Michigan. And just 1 week before the hurricane hit, their boat, the Michigan, was docked in Galveston. And William Watson, he's like, I fancy myself a little drink. So he heads out into town and he plans to go to one of the bars. It's presumed he does, because 90 minutes later, Watson is seen by someone else walking back towards the wharf, presumably drunk, because he's in quite a wobbly state based on what this witness had said. Not long after this sighting of Watson, William Watson, an oncoming train, engine 765, was barreling across the tracks when the foreman spotted a body of a person laying across the tracks. He frantically tries to stop the train, but they are just going too quickly. He spotted him too late. This guy is not moving at all on the tracks, and they couldn't, despite all of their efforts, avoid hitting him. And they did run over this man. His body was thrown 10 feet from the tracks. It was believed to be Watson, and some of the shipmates were brought to the scene, basically, of the accident to identify his body, but he was so incredibly injured from the train that his body was unrecognizable, and they were like, we're not really sure. And also, he was missing his head, so they didn't have a face to identify. That is, until the train started to roll away after they were done investigating this scene. About 1.5 miles away, a head rolls out from under the train. It is Watson's head, and he still has the hat on his head that he was wearing that day, a hat that he wore all the time, that he had specifically made and embroidered. It was like his favorite hat, and it was still on his decapitated head. It's pretty brutal.
I really thought like this was going to be like it was a ghost. Like it wasn't a real person on the tracks.
No, he was very, very tragically like mutilated by this train.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the thing. There are no ghost stories in Galveston that are nice.
Yeah, none of these have, I mean, the spirits might be fine, but the like causes of the spirits becoming the spirits is tragic.
Yeah, there's a lot of horrible deaths. There's a lot of war. There's a lot of suicide. It is really hard to hear how the people died.
Well, can I tell you a quick little like where I thought this was going? I was watching Unsolved Mysteries last night, and I was watching an episode about the Gurdon light. And there's this like train track in Gurdon, Arkansas, where this like mysterious light appears on a part of the track, and it's like it moves. It's like an orb light.
Ooh.
And we can talk about it another time, but like there's all of these like different legends and lores and mysteries that go with it. Like some people are like, it's crystals beneath the ground that are colliding and creating this like electric reaction above the ground, but it literally like moves.
That's cool.
And then there's legend of like a murder that happened on the tracks.
Oh my God.
There was one other theory that was absolute bananas, but basically there's this mysterious light sensation that happens on the tracks, and it's always in the same spot.
Wait, where is this?
Gurdon, Arkansas.
Gurdon, Arkansas. That sounds so interesting. Now I'm really, my interest is peaked.
Unsolved Mysteries. I feel like we should do an episode where we each pick something from Unsolved Mysteries and like tell each other.
That's a great idea.
Christian helped you do research for this episode. Unsolved Mysteries will help us do research for a future episode.
Except I'm not covering, well, Christian did tell me about, he told me about this guy. The guy that's haunting, the Headless man who haunts the Railroad Museum, because that is where William Watson is currently seen. The spirit of him is said to haunt the Galveston Railroad Museum. He's also viewed as a bit of a cantankerous ghost, like he's not super thrilled that everyone's around. Like he seems pretty cranky. He stomps around, he moves things, he shoves things off shelves. He's also like very active. Like this happens frequently. So frequently that he's considered a resident ghost, and a lot of people who work there have encounters with him. People who just go to the museum spot him. And one of the linesmen, actually, who was working at the museum, he said that he kept seeing this man who was standing in the back of one of the old train cars that they had just brought in as an installation. And the man was just like standing in the back of the train car, looking at him and observing all of them. And so he would run over. I think this maybe happened once or twice, that he would like try to approach this man. And he'd be like, hey, you need to get out of the car. Like, you're trespassing. You can't be up on this car. But as he was doing that, as he was like racing towards this man to be like, hey, get off of don't go behind the ropes, the man would just disappear.
It's so wild how like long the interaction is before he disappears.
Yeah. It's like until he's approached, he will just remain visibly there. And we know it's Watson. Well, luckily he has his head on. But he also has his favorite hat.
Oh. As disturbing and devastating as his death is, I'm really glad he kept his hat on the whole time. Like,
I know. His favorite hat.
Considering his head was literally dismembered off of his body, the fact that his hat remained, that's wild to me.
And it was dragged like 1.5 miles again before emerging from underneath the cars, the rail cars.
Jeez.
Yeah. Ugh. So William Watson, he doesn't seem to be the only spirit in the Galveston Railroad Museum, because people have also seen a little child and presumably his mommy. Unfortunately, this is also not great, but people think that it's the spirit of this mother and son who were killed in 1907 when a train hit their car just a couple blocks from where the museum is now. But they're often seen together. There's phantom footsteps running across the museum floors that are presumed to be this little boy running around and playing. And while these deaths did happen within the same decade of the Great Galveston Hurricane, and William Watson died only a week before the hurricane made landfall, the storm was not the cause of their lost lives. But as we know, the storm was extremely deadly, and one of the places it struck was St. Mary's Orphanage. And this is going to be about another haunting, and it's another death that's difficult to hear about, or deaths.
And it sounds like it's a lot of children.
Yeah. Yep. So St. Mary's Orphanage. Sorry, so depressing.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's just really sad. But I think a lot of ghost stories come with sad deaths.
Yeah, they do. Especially the ones that are attributed to like historical events too. It's awful. But St. Mary's Orphanage, I imagine for all the orphans that got to be there, it was a really beautiful, warm, and lovely place to live at the time, because the orphanage was situated just off of the beach. It was basically like a seaside orphanage behind a row of tall sand dunes that were supported by these salt cedar trees. And the orphanage consisted of these 2 large dorms. So it was like the girls' dorm, the boys' dorm. They were 2 stories high, and the balconies on the second story, you could see the ocean. You had ocean views, and you were like right there. You got to play in the beach all the time. Like, it was really, really lovely. Also, horribly situated for a hurricane to come off of the coast. When the hurricane hit, the 10 nuns who were at St. Mary's Orphanage, they were called the Sisters of Charity. They tried desperately to think of a way to protect all of these kids from the oncoming storm. They were seeing the worst of the storm too, because the eye of the storm literally went directly over Galveston. So it was only getting like worse and worse and worse and worse as the rain came in. So these nuns, they get together, and a lot of them are young too. These nuns are like, some of them are in their like 20s and 30s, you know?
Right.
They're gathering everyone together, all of the kids, and the 10 nuns, they rush all of the children into the girls' dorm, because this was a newer building. It was sturdier out of the other structure that they had. And they were like, let's all gather together in the first floor chapel. All the kids are so terrified. The nuns are terrified too. And so they're like, let's sing together. And so all of them are huddled together, and they're singing a hymn that typically was sung by these French fishermen to like protect them from storms. So they're all gathering together, singing this hymn about like, please protect us from the storm.
Trying to distract them too. Like this is like let's do this instead of thinking about the horrors.
Right. And you can just like, that their little voices and they're like crying. Oh my God, I can't.
Is that part of the haunting? Can you hear them singing?
No, actually you can't. The haunting part I think is fun.
Okay.
I think they're living good lives in the afterlife. Luckily.
Okay, good.
So they're singing this hymn called The Queen of Waves, and the storm is growing stronger and stronger around them. It's drowning out their voices, the whipping wind, the waves, the sea waters coming in. And so the nuns are like, holy shit. Well, they probably didn't swear, but they're like, I was just about to say, oh my God, but they probably didn't say that either.
Holy Father. They're saying Holy Father.
Yes. They're saying, please God save us. And also we need to think of something else to do to try to save ourselves right now. So in desperation, the nuns grab some clothesline and they wrap the clothesline around each of their waists and then connect the ropes to each child's wrist. So they all have like 6 or 8 kids attached to them. They then place all 93 children that are in their care into the middle of this room. And they're like basically in a circle with like all these kids attached to their midsection. And the nuns are standing on the outside trying to protect them, attempting to shield themselves and these kids.
Oh.
They hold on for as long as they can. But the debris and the waves eventually took the building and the entire dorm collapsed. It took the lives of the 10 Sisters of Charity, along with 90 of the children.
So some survived.
Some survived, yes. All of the children were between the ages of 2 and 13. Only 3 of the kids survived. They were seriously hurt. They were traumatized. They were scared to death. And one of the little kids who survived, he described watching the 15-foot waves hit the sand dunes and said that they were, quote, as if they were made of flour. So it was terrifying. Like they just had no chance. Like any barricade that was naturally up was just...
The fact that 3 kids survived, like that is...
I know.
It's so sad. I can't even imagine like the survivor's guilt that they experience and like the trauma that they have to live with to see like after seeing all of that. But like,
yeah, absolutely.
Also, terrifying. The fact that they lived is a miracle.
I know. Well, and too, it's even more of a miracle because when the waves came and it took down the building, they were scattered. Like people were found, kids and the nuns from the orphanage were found miles apart from one another. But the 3 kids who survived were all actually together hugging the same tree. So at least they like weren't separated. They were together.
The tree saved them.
We have a lighthouse and a tree so far that have been doing some good work with helping people. But the kids said that after they let go of the tree, like when it seemed like they could, they floated basically for a day in the water and eventually got to make their way to town. And when they got to town, they told people about how brave the sisters were. And one of the boys said the last that he saw of one of the sisters, she was holding 2 of the small children in her arms and she was promising them she would not let them go. I just have chills. It's horrific. So the lost children, they're thought to still haunt this area. And while the orphanage no longer stands because it was wiped out from the hurricane, and it was rebuilt at one point, but like, it doesn't stand anymore. There are other businesses, though, built in its place. The Hotel Galvez is suspected of being built basically right on top of where the sisters once huddled together with these kids.
Interesting.
It's on the plot of land that I think was part of the orphanage.
So these kids are running around the hotel.
Yes. Guests report the phantom sounds of children laughing. They're running the halls. They're playing the piano in the hotel lobby.
Aww.
And near the gift shop, there's one little girl who makes her appearance known. And she appears in 19th century clothing and she will bounce her ball. And also, the hotel underwent some construction and just some updates and stuff. And every time that happens, the workers will report a lot of unexplained freaky activity happening. And basically, I think the kids are just like spooking and pranking the construction workers.
I love that.
I know. On the 94th anniversary of the storm, so September 8th, 1994, there was a marker that was placed right here, like in this block where the orphanage once stood. So it's 69th Street and Seawall Boulevard to basically memorialize the brave sisters and the children who lost their lives that day.
Mm-hmm.
It is said that you may still spot the nuns strolling the seaside, walking the beach. And while the kids are also out exploring and running around the hotel and whatnot, they're not just at the beach and the hotel. They have also discovered a big box store, a blue box store with a lot
IKEA?
of toys inside.
Oh, wait.
Walmart.
Walmart.
The kids of St. Mary's Orphanage are believed to be haunting the Walmart on Seawall Boulevard. Toys will often be moved around. Entire pallets of toys that come in to be sold will just disappear from the storage facility, like attached to the Walmart.
Stop.
It'll later turn up again, but like it will disappear for a while. And it's also been noted that the kids prefer electronic toys, though they also really enjoy knocking all the balls out of the ball cage and bouncing them around.
Oh,
and
I love that.
The baby doll section, sometimes the dolls will just like blink. And so the hope is that
I don't
the
think
ghost children are playing with the doll, making them blink, and that they're not actually getting possessed.
Okay, if they are getting possessed, though, I hope they're being possessed by these little kid spirits who, like, for a moment just, like, want to be in a human-like body again.
Yeah.
And that, I totally, like, that's like, you know, our listener, Sarah, who has a bunch of haunted dolls. I really love those types of haunted dolls where it's a childlike spirit that is trying to, like, relive some type of humanity.
Yeah, you're right. That part is lovely. And it's also like, you know, they get to be nurturing and kind of like care for baby dolls and stuff. But I just feel like Walmart is one of the like top 10 choices of places you could haunt as a ghost kid. And I'm so glad that they get to haunt a Walmart. And also the Walmart is like across from the beach. Like that is so perfect.
I also like really feel like there are multiple Walmarts that are haunted. And we've had emails from people.
Yes.
And I also feel like weird things happen in Walmart parking lots. Like Walmart just, they kind of put off an energy like, come haunt me. That's their like new tagline.
You're right. I feel like Waffle House has the reputation of like fights go down in Waffle House and there's always human on human brawls. But Walmart, I guess, has the reputation now of being attractive to the spirits.
And like weird deals that happen in the parking lot.
Lots of stuff goes down in Walmart. They let you park overnight. So I think that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in this Walmart, the Galveston Seawall Boulevard Walmart, fire extinguishers have been thrown. And I couldn't find more information on this part, but I really, really want to know. There was like a little blurb about how a few years back they were doing some renovations. And in the rubble of some of the renovations, like as they were tearing things down and demoing, ghostly faces appeared. And I couldn't find any more information because I was like, does that mean people were looking at the rubble and like an actual like stain of a face was there? Or were they just seeing faces like randomly, like an actual apparitions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh.
But employees have spotted the children quite often. They know that it's the ghost children because the Walmart will be closed. There will be no one else in there except for the employees, and they will see children. They will hear the phantom laughing and sometimes crying. It's really sad. There is this one girl who does cry out for her mom every once in a while, which breaks my heart.
Well, it's also an orphanage, so they already were crying for their moms.
I know. My heart hurts. The cash registers will malfunction, but like not in a normal techie way, very much in a paranormal way, I guess. And the automatic doors will open and close on their own as if they're detecting people moving through the doors that aren't there. So potentially just the ghost children coming and going from the Walmart whenever they want to play.
I love that.
Oh, sometimes they'll see dirty footprints. It's like child-sized dirty footprints just appear in the Walmart.
What kind of messes were they getting into?
I know. I'm like, is that like a beach day? Like were they barefoot on the beach and then ran into the Walmart? I need more information on that as well. But I do think these kids have really figured out the world of hauntings. You know, they access new fresh toys. They have fresh ocean air, endless hotel hallways to play in. They've got it going on.
And there's always people there. Yeah,
True.
Maybe at night it's empty, but like during the day they can people watch, they can interact with people. Like that's a good place to haunt.
100%.
Yeah.
And so those are just a few stories from Galveston, but Galveston is very haunted. And it's not just because it was the site of the deadliest natural disaster in the U.S. It saw battles between the Karankawa native people, the Spanish explorers. Jean Lafitte actually spent some time there. Jean Lafitte of New Orleans.
Jean Lafitte?
He was trying to make it a pirate paradise, and then the U.S. Navy came and eventually kicked him out. So he spent some time there.
I think he tried to do that a couple of times.
He was a dreamer, and he never gave up on that dream. Despicable Jean Lafitte. But there was also a lot of other stuff that happened there. There were multiple yellow fever epidemics. The Spanish flu came through. There were a lot of freak accidents. You know, like William Watson, the Headless Man with the hat. He was one of them. A bunch of different battles happened, civil wars. So the place, I think possibly very well may have the most amount of hauntings per square feet.
Yeah. There's so many hauntings there, clearly, and there's so much tragedy that's happened and so much history that's happened. But like, I feel like it's one of those things where we learn about this and then like tomorrow we're going to learn about a new place and we're like, oh my gosh, I never thought there could be another place with more hauntings. But
I know.
The truth is the world is haunted. Earth is haunted. There are ghosts everywhere. And we're never going to stop doing this podcast.
I mean, we have like a year or two worth of ghost stories just from Galveston alone.
Right. I did find out more information about the Avalanche.
Oh, okay. Your grandfather?
It's my great-grandfather, so my mom's grandfather. His name is Giacomo Toniati. He was born in the late 1800s, but so there's this historical avalanche that happened during World War I. I think it was called White Friday in 1916. So it was a powerful avalanche kills hundreds of Austrian soldiers in a barracks near Italy's Mount Marmolada on December 13th, 1916. Over a period of several days, multiple avalanches in the Italian Alps killed an estimated 10,000 Austrian and Italian soldiers in mid-December.
Whoa.
So I don't know 100% that my great-grandfather is the only one who survived, but that's the iteration of the story that my mom and like family has told.
Or at least from his group, you know, like he could have been in a group of 10 people and be the only one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's so scary. Natural disasters freak me out so much because it's like, I mean, if anyone's ever experienced being kind of pummeled by like an ocean wave even and having difficulty getting up or out of the ocean, it's just like a reminder of how strong Mother Nature is when it's barely even trying and how frail we are.
Also, like all of these men are fighting in World War I. Like they're probably terrified and concerned of dying in battle. And then all of a sudden a natural disaster comes and takes their lives. Like you don't expect that. So scary.
I wonder what the response was to that because, you know, like those are very religious groups of people. And I wonder if they maybe took the avalanche as like I don't know, how they thought of that event in the midst of a war. Was it a sign to stop?
I would love to like find writings because I'm sure like my great-grandfather wrote things. I wonder if my mom has any of that stuff.
Yeah. I know it's hard because I feel like we assume a lot that people chronicled things and wrote things down.
Or that people would keep it. But a lot of the times it's like, why would you?
And a lot of the people that are writing things down were writing things down because it was literally their job to write things down and chronicle like explorations and different things. Like I have no writings. Started journals a few times, read them back a few years later, shred the papers, toss them.
I have a story from our listener, Paige, and they also did the haunted walking tour in Galveston.
Ooh. I wonder which one. I mean, I was asking my brother, I was like, what was the tour called that you went on? Because there's so many. And I was like, I can like say what tour you went on. He couldn't remember. Right. 24 hours later, he's like, I don't know.
Okay. This is from Paige, and it's called Something Pretends to Be My Grandpa in My Dream. First off, hello, ladies. I listen to y'all's podcast all the time at work. I work at an art museum, and sometimes it gets very slow. I also got my coworker Emily hooked on the podcast, and she's the one who really, really wanted me to tell my story. I would also like to say I'm only on episode 27, so it's probably going to take me some time to get to hear y'all talk about my story. I'm also from Texas. So there's some background and then there's a story. Background. I've always been sort of open to ghosts. I get a heaviness in my chest when I can feel a presence of some sort, and I've never really had anything happen until middle school when I had a ghost in my room who I only saw once as a tall shadow who turned his head to look at me and would also knock on my walls.
Ooh.
But okay, this story. In 2021, I went to Galveston, very haunted, and I took a haunted walking tour. And on the tour, I felt very sad. And I started to cry about 20 minutes into the tour. I saw a bunch of images of people hugging and wailing. I looked at my little sisters and said, people are sad that we don't know who they are. Oh. And my little sister said, do you feel sad? I said, yes, there's a large group of people that are really sad and I can feel all of them. A few minutes later, the guide told us that we were walking over a massive unmarked grave called the Boneyard, where about 1,400 people were piled there after the hurricane, and the city was built on top of them.
Oh my God.
A little while later, my grandpa passed away. My grandpa was a bigger man. He served in Vietnam and he was a CB. He was on the construction side of things and was always hands-on and just so sweet. After he passed, I would dream of him saying that he will always be there for me and my sisters. But Dream Me would be like, no, silly, you're alive. And he would say, no, Paige, I'm gone, remember? And I would wake up.
Well, because it feels so real that he's there in the dream in the moment. So you're like, well, I'm here just as much as you're here.
Yeah. I had like 10 dreams similar to this one. And some we were just talking and he would say the same thing, or I would be chasing him. And every time he would say, no, Paige, remember, I'm gone. And I would wake up after he said that. So I was having one of these dreams and it wasn't uncommon for me. But when I had this specific dream, it was about a year after his passing. The dream was set up like this: half of my room and half of my grandparents' kitchen. In the kitchen, my twin sister, I have a twin sister and a little sister, and my twin sister and I are not identical. But in my room, there was an EMF reader, and I was asking questions trying to contact my grandpa, and my twin was too. I looked at my twin and looked back at the EMF reader in my room, and on my dresser, it starts going off like crazy. My twin and I look at each other and say, it's Papa. I look back into my room, and everything is being thrown around by an invisible force. I look back to my twin, who is in my grandpa's kitchen, and I see my papa, and I tell her I see him, but she can't see him. And I see him just standing in front of her, and stuff is still being thrown around my room, and the EMF is going off like crazy. I look back to my twin, but this time, my papa is not himself. He's skinny and very tall, like curling over the ceiling tall, and his mouth is gaping open to where his jaw is on the floor, and he starts to look demonic and starts screaming so loud, my ears were ringing.
Oh.
This whole time this is happening in my dream, my twin is standing there because she cannot see him or hear him. But the scream is so awful. I truly can hear it anytime I think about the dream. And this happened almost 2 years ago. I look at this thing, pretending to be my papa, and I yell, leave my family alone. You're not my grandpa. Leave us alone. The thing looked at me, paused screaming, and then started screaming again. I woke up all clammy and sweaty, and I felt like it was an entity pretending to be my grandpa to get in my head. But I haven't had any dreams of my papa since. I hope you ladies like my story. Stay spooky. Keep up the amazing work. And then Paige sent us a follow-up a couple days later and said, P.S. The day after sending this email, I started to feel super uneasy. So I went to go see my grandma. On my way to go see her, I got in a car accident and totaled my car. Not my fault, but I saged immediately after that. And I just wanted to let you know it feels super weird, but I'm okay. Love, Paige.
Thank goodness. My gosh, Paige, we're glad you're okay. That's really scary.
It's so scary.
I hope this isn't true, but part of me went to when you're in the astral plane, when you're having the visitations with loved ones, we don't know how it works. So we don't know if there's a protective bubble around you or if other things in the astral plane can still kind of access that. So I am curious if there was something kind of darker that might have wandered by and kind of seen the openness of that conversation between her and her papa and was like,
right.
Oh, I can pretend to just be him and gain access. But I don't know, because he also that creature wasn't really trying to just be papa, was taking on his image, but acting bizarrely and was just like this horrific creature.
But at first he was, and then he evolved and became something terrifying. But in my mind, it gives me very much talk to me vibes. But then I also wonder, because Paige has not seen or had dreams with her papa since, that part of me is what if he moved on and this darker entity knew that he moved on? And so he was well, before Paige and her family catch on to the fact that he's moved on, I'm going to use his likeness to manipulate them.
It's upsetting.
Either way, it's scary. And also it's so sad that it sounds like Paige is very, very in tune and empathetic for her to know there was a ton of people there who were sad before even finding out that they were walking over basically a cemetery.
Right. It makes me so sad too, because I wish they didn't need that. I wish the spirits didn't need the identification. They didn't need the acknowledgement or recognition to be able to move on.
I know.
And if people did do that, if we could recognize who was there, would that help them move on? Because I'm thinking about, is it King's Chapel Burial in Boston? One of those cemeteries in Boston, they have basically a mass grave. And there's a marker being there are this many bodies and people buried here.
Interesting.
And I wonder if that's enough.
It's hard because none of them are identified,
I know. But their families, I would assume their families knew that they past, you know, like they were never. Yeah. So it's like their memory lived elsewhere with other relatives who weren't in Galveston.
And it could just be a residual, like sadness, you know, which I hope that's what it is, where it's just like the intensity of all these people like holding each other in the final moments of their lives. That's just festering in that area.
Yeah. Man. What a sad episode.
Very. But we had some interesting tidbits. We learned a lot.
We did.
So not all negative. And also, you know what? There's ways to bring positivity back into our lives. Just go step outside, and hopefully it's a sunny day. Even if it's snowing, go step outside, like stick out your tongue and let the snow fall on your tongue, or go eat grass. I don't know, whatever you need to do. Watch Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah, those are great. I feel like every piece of advice you gave is something that we actually should advise against.
Sticking your tongue out and letting the snow hit your tongue is so great.
It is great. Technically, there's a lot of bacteria, but you're right. It's great. It's fun. It's an experience. Listen, it once.
Some bacteria is good. Give me the bacteria. Yeah. Bacteria is everywhere.
That's true. So just touch some grass, drink some tea.
Consume bacteria. Ooh, it just got dark. Did you see that?
It did.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Maybe it's going to start snowing where you are too. Freak weather.
I think it's
incident.
like 60 degrees, so probably not.
Oh. Well, thank you guys all for being here. If you have ghost stories, any paranormal experiences, please email us at twogirlsoneghost@gmail.com. You can find our email on our social media, in our show notes, and on our website, Two Girls One Ghost, along with any information about our sponsors and the deals that were offered, any new news that we have, links to our social media, and to our Patreon, where we do really fun things, including giving you every single episode ad-free 1 week early, bonus episode every single month, weekly campfire stories where we bring you on stage with us for an hour to talk about your own experiences. We have book clubs, we give stickers, we have holiday cards, so many different things.
We love you all so very much. And we wanted to say thank you to our editor and producer, Jamie Ryan, who edits our video and audio every episode. And thank you to all of you for listening and coming back week to week and bringing everyone else into the pyramid scheme. We're grateful for all of you.
And we will see you on the other side.